Your Honour, my name is Edwards, EGW, initial J, and I appear for the plaintiff Susan Snooty. I'll familiarise the court with the case. My client, Susan Snooty, planned to buy a relatively flat piece of land not too far from Mount Hotham, subdivide it, and create a small regional airstrip and hangar space. With the incorporation of her own company, So Snooty Incorporated, she proceeded with her plan. She purchased the land and included all necessary construction crews to create a small airstrip with one runway. My client also had all necessary approvals, including council and preliminary Civil Aviation Safety Authority approvals, as she planned to register the airstrip with the CASA as an aerodrome after the hangars were constructed. Faye White handled the sale of the remaining lots of So Snooty Incorporated's land. On the 2nd of June 2018, the defendant, Mr. Papa Razi, responded to one of Faye White's advertisements for the remaining lots of So Snooty Incorporated's land. Mr. Razi explained that he was interested in the land and wanted to know how big a hangar could be built on Lot 2 if purchased. This email from Mr. Razi was sent to Miss Snooty, where she then replied on the 3rd of June 2018. My client then sent another email to the defendant on the 4th of June, letting him know that she would fix up the fit-out costs for the concession on the airstrip if he were to purchase Lot 2 of her land. Mr. Razi responded to Miss Snooty, stating that the plan sounded good and that they should get together to see if they could work something out. Several meetings were held after this between the pair regarding the fit-out for the shop. On the 12th of July 2018, Mr. Razi emailed Miss Snooty saying that he would go ahead with the purchase and fit-out, and that he had signed the contract to purchase Lot 2. My client then signed on the same day and sent a copy of the contract to Mr. Razi. This contract did not include any information about the costs of fit-out for the food and beverage concession. Ms. Snooty emailed Mr. Razi on the 5th of September 2018 saying that they had commenced levelling lots 16, 18 and 2. Mr. Razi responded, asking for my client to send through the settlement paperwork, which Ms. Snooty sent to him on the 8th of September 2018. Mr. Razi ordered the hangar components, with Ms. Snooty commenting on their size upon arrival, saying they looked too tall compared to other hangar beams on the adjacent lots. Mr. Razi sent an email to Ms. Snooty on the 26th of January 2019, including a $50,000 bill to make the food and beverage concession comply with safety regulations. She responded stating that she does not have to pay the $50,000 bill and also that the hangar does not comply with the CASA height restrictions. This leads me to my first submission, Your Honour. So Snooty Incorporated is not liable under Section 18 of the Australian Consumer Law for misleading or deceptive conduct, as they did not fail to inform Papa R of the height of Lot 2. Section 18 of the Australian Consumer Law states a person must not, in trade or commerce, engage in conduct that is misleading or deceptive or is likely to mislead or deceive. To hold someone liable for misleading or deceptive conduct in each of these principles would need to be met. In this case, they are not. My client is a person who acted in trade or commerce, but she did not engage in misleading or deceptive conduct. Proof that a person has been misled requires evidence that they have been led astray in reliance on the action or conduct, or led into error or caused to error. The defendant claims that So Snooty Incorporated did not inform him of the height of Lot 2. But on the 8th of September 2018, my client emailed Mr. Razi a PDF file that contained the height of Lot 2, which was 1 metre. Also, before Mr. Razi entered into the contract, Ms. Snooty sent him an email on the 3rd of June 2018 explaining hangar heights set by CASA, and explained that if Papa R was to go ahead with Lot 2, then the actual height has to take into account the final level of the lot once it has been levelled. In Miller and Associates Insurance Broking Proprietary Limited and BMW Australia Finance Limited, it was concluded that Miller's failure to draw to BMW's attention a circumstance that the document itself disclosed was not misleading or deceptive. The same way that Ms. Snooty's failure to ensure that Mr. Razi had read the PDF file containing the height of the lot does not qualify as misleading or deceptive. It is evident that my client did in fact advise the defendant of the height of Lot 2 without misleading or deceiving him, and therefore cannot be held liable under Section 18 of the Australian Consumer Law for misleading or deceptive conduct. I now move on to my second submission. Stopping my client from denying payment of Papa R's fit-out costs can only be established if equitable estoppel is proved. There must first be representation, which my client did give in an email to Mr. Razi. She stated, "If you go ahead with Lot 2, I'll fix up Papa R's fit-out costs for the concession." Ms. Snooty did induce Mr. Razi to rely upon the representation by saying that she was prepared to be more generous. Mr. Razi was then reliant on Ms. Snooty to pay for the fit-out costs. Ms. Snooty was aware of this as she was waiting for Mr. Razi to get quotes to build the concession. While Mr. Razi did rely on Ms. Snooty to pay for the fit-out costs, he did not build a hangar that met CASA standards. All contracts related to the land stated that the sale is conditional upon and subject to the requirements of the annexed plan of subdivision as to hangar height restrictions. Both parties expressly acknowledge this condition is fundamental to this contract to allow the seller to ensure the airstrip meets the CASA standards for a registered aerodrome. The plan of subdivision for the lots contained a restrictive covenant stating lots 2 to 18 were land to be burdened. The description of the restriction being the registered proprietor for the time being of lots 2 to 18 on this plan shall not construct any hangar that is not in accordance with the height restrictions as per the current CASA Manual of Standards. My client should not be stopped from denying payment of Papa R's fit-out costs, as Mr. Razi did not adhere to the rules of the plan of subdivision for the lots, and hence built a hangar that does not meet CASA standards, thus denying my client of the concession that she was promised by Mr. Razi. Thank you, Your Honour.